What's up everybody? So not too long ago I did a video on the Samsung Galaxy S5 and pretty much talked about how it held up in 2018, and it's no spoiler, I do a lot of these type of phones, but one type of phone that Samsung made that I haven't hit on yet and I haven't even done one video on were the active line of phones. And this was pretty much a counterpart of this phone, of their flagship, the Galaxy S5s, S7s, S whatever. And the best way to explain it was that it was pretty much a robust version of their main flagships. I used to see commercials for this phone and even the Galaxy S4 Active, which I'm going to make a video about in like a week or two. And it's crazy to get one now. Now this thing actually came out in 2014, so over 4 years ago. Now looking around the body, it doesn't look too bad. I feel like this is a very polarizing type of body. It's like you love it or you hate it. Me personally, I kind of like it. The buttons on the front are something that I kind of personally like. There's no fingerprint sensor, which does kind of suck a little bit, but at that time it wasn't really that big of a deal, but it is kind of a big deal now, so you kind of have to take that as it is. Samsung did add one on their next active version of the phone, so keep that in mind. The power button is on the right side, and there's actually an activity button on top of the volume buttons, which is a nice touch. You can click this and you can see your activity, your compass, which is kind of weird. I didn't even know that was something you needed, but I couldn't find a way to remap this, so it does kind of suck a little bit, but it's still better to have it than not have it. I feel like this is more for people who are hiking or something like that. The image on top kind of, led me into that inference, but it's all good. Now, you do have a removable back with a removable battery and removable storage, so it's a super nice touch. And I wish phones kept that type of features. I mean, that's a really big deal. Now you have to take apart the phone to remove with the battery, but at this time you still have the removable back and the removable storage as well. Now looking at the front once more, the screen is probably one of the greater aspects of this phone. It's a Super AMOLED display and it's 1080p, so it has great colors. It's not like Galaxy S9 standards or iPhone 10 standards, but it's definitely better than the iPhone 8 Plus screen in my opinion. And I love these colors so much. And the overall AMOLED panels are pretty good. I mean, they're the best panels out right now. And now turning it on, we have Android Lollipop. Now before you get mad, I know this is upgradable to Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow, but for some reason I cannot get my device to update. I have no idea why. I try my best, but I just can't. Every time I click check for updates, it says that it's fully updated and it says check back later. I don't know what's going on, so I'm gonna try my best to get it updated again. But low-key I am kind of mad, but I mean, it did stop at Android 6, so at least that's actually a pretty decent spot. Really, people weren't buying this thing for the software or the amount of software updates it was going to have. They bought it mostly for the hardware because it was like waterproof, dustproof, saltproof, mom-proof, all that stuff, dude. This thing could have handled anything you threw at it, literally. Now, overall speed and stability seems okay. When you're on the home screen and scrolling through like apps and the home screen and all that stuff, it's actually pretty decent. I don't see that much lag or like crashing or anything like that. Even opening apps is pretty decent. Multitasking is really my only complaint. It has 2 gigabytes of RAM, which isn't horrible, but on an Android like this, I kind of would expect maybe like 3, but I do have to remember this thing came out in 2014. But sometimes apps do close pretty fast in the background, and when an app does open, sometimes it does take an extra second or two, and it does seem a bit glitchy. And sometimes apps, whenever I might not even have that many apps open, but sometimes they do close in the background over like small usage, so that's kind of weird. But overall, the performance and everything isn't that bad. Really, the only weird thing that I had was in the gaming sense. Now, I don't really understand what happened here, but I opened up Real Racing 3 and that game does not run well on this phone at all. It does glitch. It has glitched frames everywhere, which I wasn't expecting since it had a quad-core CPU clocked at 2.5 GHz and an Adreno 330 GPU. And this type of performance really reminds me of the LG G3 that I had, if you guys remember that, which also had pretty much the same performance on Real Racing 3, but in every other sense it was perfectly fine. But when I ran like a higher intensive game, it just showed like glitched frames everywhere. Then the weird thing is I went to play another game that was kind of lower in graphics, and that game ran fairly well. I would say above average. Before you start the game, it does kind of like test your GPU and your benchmark and all that stuff. I don't really get it, but it senses how fast your phone is, and from there it like changes the graphics and everything. And when I booted it up for the first time, it did have the graphics all the way set high. And this game isn't graphically intensive that much, but it is kind of a little bit. And this game, Pew Pew, ran perfectly fine. And then what I did is that, I was like, you know what, this is like a kind of a basic game. Let me bump it up a little bit and find a sweet spot. And then I played Dead Trigger, which is a game I used to play all the time on this channel, and that played overall fine as well. And that game is pretty good, I would say, in terms of like performance and like benchmarks and graphics overall. So it's kind of weird that this phone can run like basic games and like somewhat higher intensive games like Dead Trigger, which do take like 3D graphics and moving back and forth, and it's a 3D world. But when it comes to Real Racing 3, which is probably one of the more high intensive games I can think of, it can't run that well. And now maybe it is because of the processor or whatever, but I don't know. I mean, it could be software, but it mostly is hardware. So that is something to keep in mind if you do plan on doing or playing higher intensive games such as Real Racing 3. That is something that, you know, might affect you if you want to play those things. And another thing to keep in mind is that this phone does heat up quite a bit when it does come to overall performance, like gaming and all that stuff. It wasn't as bad as the Galaxy S4, but this phone definitely does heat up when you're playing games. And now switching to the camera, it's also pretty decent. It's a 16 megapixel sensor. It's not horrible at all, and I don't really expect too much out of cameras nowadays, but this thing did come out in 2014, so I have to keep reminding myself of that. Now with the right lighting, even horrible cameras can have good photos, but overall this sensor is pretty good. I would say it's above average. It can shoot 4K videos at 30 frames per second, and it can shoot 1080p videos at 30 frames per second, but you can't really, there's no like anything else besides that. So the overall camera is on the better side when you do consider the age of this phone. Like I said, there's a 2 megapixel front camera, which is alright, and this thing does shoot photos pretty good. I did kind of have, they're not necessarily washed out colors. When you're focusing on one subject, it does seem like it can focus on pretty well. But when you were like starting, like if you see my keyboard photo with my Magic Trackpad, it does seem like it's kind of washed out a little bit. I don't know. The lighting was pretty decent, I would say. I mean, I have my huge like photography lighting on the thing, so I don't really know. I think it's okay. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best thing out. Even in 2014, I wouldn't say it was the best camera out, but yeah. Yo, this is a quick camera test. As you can see, I mean, it's not that bad. It does seem kind of a little bit grainy. It might be because of my viewfinder, but it's really not that bad. As you can see, like I'm trying to like focus in on this, and it seems pretty decent. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see it kind of like hunts. It doesn't really autofocus that well. It kind of like just goes in and out and out autofocus. Then when I go back, you can see it autofocuses pretty quickly, but when I come in, you can see it does take like an extra second. It still doesn't seem that bad, and it's usually under direct light, so should be actually pretty good lighting here. I'll try to get my Galaxy S6 active, or S7 active for that matter, and it doesn't seem like it's too bad. I don't even think this one's on. No, this was not on. If I grab my iPhone 10, for example, you can see that it actually looks pretty good. The colors seem pretty decent. This is just like a white little test because I am under white direct light, but this is just a little quick glimpse of the overall video quality. And now switching to the battery life, it's kind of a strange thing on this. You know, with the stock battery, it's not even that bad. It's 2,1800 milliamp hours, but you have to remember that this phone, not only is it underpowered a little bit, I wouldn't say it's the slowest thing out, but in terms of like the phones now that have like 8 gigabytes of RAM, this thing only had 2, and it's not as overpowered. So with 2,800 milliamp hours, it does kind of manage it pretty well. But you also have to remember that this battery probably already deteriorated as well. So the 2,800 milliamp hours isn't what it has anymore. It's probably like 2,300 or 2,200. But the whole shifting factor of this, and the reason I say it's weird, is because this phone does have a removable battery and a removable back. So you can remove the back and replace the battery super easily. You can get them on eBay or whatever for like $7 or $8 and shift it out instead of having to open up your whole entire phone to change the battery. And this is why these phones are always so much better. And this is why I always recommend people to buy phones with removable batteries, but you can't really do that anymore because they don't do it. But yeah, if I had to choose, I would say it's better than any other phone right now in 2018 that doesn't have a removable battery. And I really hope phone manufacturers do kind of shift to making more phones with removable batteries. It's never going to happen, but you know, a boy can dream. Now, some other things to note: this phone does have a headphone jack. It really doesn't affect me, but I do have to note it. There's a speaker on the back. It's really not that good. It's like a tinny kind of, it's no front facing speaker or like even a bottom facing speaker. It's all the way on the back. So if you love your audio, then this might be a problem for you. There is no fingerprint sensor, which should be a given. This phone did come out in 2014, but even then the Galaxy S5 had a fingerprint sensor. So will it affect me? Probably not, but you know, let's just say you give up your fingerprint sensor to gain back all that, you know, robustness, the waterproofness and all that stuff. And like I said, this phone is waterproof, shockproof, basically everything proof, dust proof, which is a huge reason to buy this phone. It was the main selling point for people to buy this, and the reason it was called active, because if you're more active, you have a higher chance of breaking your phone, and this phone was more robust in that way. And this phone does have a heart rate sensor, so that does probably speak to you if you're active. And this phone has a removable micro SD card slot as well, so you can go put in more storage. I think it's up to 256 gigabytes. You can expand that storage and you'll be good to go. So is the Galaxy S5 Active worth it in 2018? I would say if you're on a tight budget, it's really not that bad of a phone. You know, it's not getting any more updates, which does kind of suck. So stock, you're on Android Marshmallow, unless you're in a case like me, which you can only be stuck with Android Lollipop. Don't know if there's a root or a ROM out for it. There might be. I would recommend you doing that if you want to, but if you want to keep it stock, you know, Android Marshmallow is not that bad. So this phone overall isn't like horrible or slow or anything. It's completely still usable. You can still do pretty much everything with it. Your apps are still going to be updated, you know, so you won't be like that far behind. Only the stock apps like the settings and all those things that Android Nougat and Android Oreo have, those are things that you'll probably be missing out on, but it's not that big of a deal. And on top of that, you get a removable battery and you get removable storage as well. So this phone is pretty good on everything. You'll be pretty much set and good to go once you get this phone. I would recommend it overall. It's not a horrible phone, but there are better options out there. I will be doing a Galaxy S6 Active and Galaxy S7 Active reviews very, very soon, so stay tuned for that. Maybe you want to make your decision after that, but you know what? That's pretty much it. If you want to take the plunge, I'll leave links in the description for Galaxy S5 Active, so you can go ahead and pick one up. I'll leave a Galaxy S6 Active and Galaxy S7 Active down there too if you guys want, just to save you some clicks. But yeah, guys, that is pretty much it. If you have any questions or any concerns or any comments, please leave them down in the comment section below. I will try my best to read your comments. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. We are still giving away an iPhone 6s and an iPhone SE on this channel, and in order to enter, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Both those links are down in the description, so make sure you guys enter that. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys, and hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.